Hi there. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Pune Literary Festival for another successful year. I'm Anita Murjani, and one of the things that's close to my heart, which I believe the world needs more of, is compassion. And also, to go with that, we need more empathy, sensitivity, and love. And of course, let's throw joy into that mix too. We're going through really strange times right now. And what I've noticed is that the messages that are coming at us, whether it's from mainstream media, social media, generally from the world at large, the messages seem to be very fear-based. And because we are now in this kind of fear-based state where people are worried and concerned, they're concerned about the pandemic and so on, what this does is it puts us in fight or flight, which actually makes us very divisive and angry sometimes towards our fellow human beings. Everybody is just doing their best. And that's why I wanted to remind people that what's missing right now is compassion, empathy, love for our fellow human beings. And so I make it my mission to keep spreading that and sharing that. I actually make it a point to not share fear-based messages at all. And because there's enough people doing it already. Even when people tell me that I need to be more realistic, this is real, it's okay. There's enough people doing it. I'm here to spread love and compassion and empathy. And I think that more of us should be doing that. And so this is my reminder for you to do that. And also, of course, this is a good time to spread and share joy and happiness. So thank you for listening and tuning in. And I wish you all the best. Love you guys. Bye.
Good evening and welcome to Studio 2. We now begin a very interesting conversation. Yours truly, Cecilia Ahern. Through this conversation, we hope to know more about Cecilia's inspiring creative journey, her experiences, and learnings in the process. In conversation with Miss Cecelia Ahern will be Miss Sam Blake. Sam Blake is a best-selling Irish crime writer. Her Cat Colony police procedural trilogy, including runaway bestseller Little Bones, was shortlisted for the Irish Crime Book of the Year 2016. Her first, Keep Your Eyes on Me, was released in January 2020 and shot straight to #1 in Ireland. The Dark Room was shortlisted for the Irish Crime Novel of the Year in 2021. Sam is also the founder of Murder One, Ireland's international crime writing festival. We will now watch a short video on our esteemed guest, Cecelia Ahern. Post that, Sam Blake can take the conversation forward.
Cecelia Ahern is an Irish novelist known for her works like P.S. I Love You, Where Rainbows End, and If You Could See Me Now. Born in Dublin, Ahern has been published in nearly 50 countries and has sold over 25 million copies of her novels in 30 languages worldwide. Two of her books, P.S. I Love You and Love Rosie, have been adapted as major movies. Before starting her writing and producing career, Ahern obtained a degree in journalism and media communications from Griffith College, Dublin, but withdrew from a master's degree course to pursue writing. Cecilia's highly acclaimed collection of short stories, Roar, is now in development for Apple TV with many major production houses in Hollywood, along with Ahern's own Greenlight Go Productions. She has written a TV series and a feature film, the sequel to P.S. I Love You, titled Postscript. Her current novel is titled Freckles. Ahern and her books have won numerous awards, including the Irish Book Award for Popular Fiction for the year I Met You. Along with several published novels, she has contributed a number of short stories to various anthologies. Ahern also created and produced the ABC comedy Samantha Who. Cosmopolitan US honored her with the Fun Fearless Fiction Award 2007 for If You Could See Me Now. Irish Tetler awarded her Writer of the Year at the Woman of the Year Awards in 2009. Cecilia's fifth novel, Thanks for the Memories, was nominated for Most Popular Book in the British Book Awards 2008. Cecilia was voted Author of the Year in the UK Glamour Women of the Year Awards in 2008. We are extremely delighted to welcome Miss Cecelia Ahern at the Pune International Literary Festival 2021.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm great. That was so lovely. Thank you.
Wasn't that a lovely introduction? I'm very impressed. It feels very, very the real thing now with a lovely video introduction.
Out of my home and like I'm at a real literary festival. It was fantastic.
Exactly, and you have the sparkles to match. That's perfect.
The sparkles.
Absolutely lovely and Christmassy. So we're delighted to be here. Thank you very much indeed for having us, Pune Literary Festival. We are going to be talking about Freckles, which is Cecilia's latest book. But first, I'd like to take you back to P.S. I Love You and how that incredible idea arrived. So you were doing your master's in journalism at the time and studying screenwriting and script writing. But take us back to having that first idea.
Yeah, so I had just begun a master's in film production actually, and I was only in for about 2 days. So, this idea just took over. I mean, I wish I knew where it came from. It's the one question I'm asked more than anything else. Where did P.S. I Love You come from? And I don't know the moment. Like I don't know what the trigger was. But it had a lot to do with where I was in my life at the time. I was definitely in the same place as my character Holly, you know, in a very in-between place. I call it my quarter life crisis. So I was trying to figure out who I was and where I was going, and was also very fearful, and I wasn't in a great place. And so I had this fear of losing all the people that I loved, and if I did, what would be a beautiful way of being able to hold on to them. And I thought, well, if whoever I lost left me a list of letters, that would like help me to hold on to them and maintain that communication. And that's where the idea came from. So it kind of was inspired by my state, you know, the place that I was in personally at that time. And then of course took it to a completely fictional place. And you know, when I finished the novel, Holly had found a new direction in her life. And by the time I finished it, I had a book deal and a whole new direction in my life. I had a career. And so it was a very special story that I think changed my life. I poured my heart and my soul into writing the story. I'd write it from about 10 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning, hand wrote it, longhand, and then I would type it up the next day and just cocooned myself for about 3 months, which is a very short time really, but it was very intense time. And I had no idea, I had no idea that it would touch so many people around the world, but that's kind of, it taught me a lot, that no matter what we're experiencing, you never know what someone on the other side of the world will connect with and identify with it. So it was a really important book for me, professionally, personally, and certainly for my career, because it just began everything.
Blew everything up. I think that touching people is something that comes across so clearly. Whenever we do these interviews, we get so many comments about people who perhaps were in a similar place to you at the time, and it literally transformed you, and it's transformed them. But I think it's writing from the heart, isn't it? It's that passion that you brought to the page, and clearly writing in 3 months, it just flew out.
I don't know how else to write, Sam. I don't know how. Obviously, I'm not writing about myself. I think of all the novels, I can say that was very close to where I was. And sometimes there's a little bit of me in every novel, or a theory that I'm examining at that time in my life, or, you know, something that I'm going through. But I always put, you know, my real emotions into it, you know, laugh and cry, like literally be at my desk crying my eyes out. I don't know if you're the same, but I feel like if I don't put that into it, then the reader can't get that back out of it. So there's kind of a magic that happens when I'm writing. It's a very it's a very draining way to write, but it's very rewarding, and so it's really special to me. Now you can hear people, of course, can read it and feel nothing, just not feel any connection with my work. But when people read it and really feel what my intention was and what I meant, that's really special, because you don't feel so alone then, you know. We're so connected by the things that we feel and the problems that we have, or the hopes and the dreams, and that it's just a really lovely thing to experience with your reader, to have that kind of connection, and that they got it, you know, and that they get the joke, or they get the sarcastic comment, or, you know, they get the way that you think, the kind of view you have on the world. It's a great thing.
And that comes through every single book. It's not just the first one. I mean, it's all of them, all the way along the line, that rawness and that. And I think the way you write it's a way of channeling, isn't it? Because you do, as you just mentioned, you've glossed over lightly there that you handwrite, and you handwrote this first book, P.S. I Love You, which for the rest of us writers who type is stunning. Honestly, I think there is a real connection between brain and pen. And yes, have you got it there hidden away?
I have it here. I can't.
Let's have a little look and show everybody the original manuscript of P.S. I Love You.
The original P.S. I Love You manuscript, which is not glamorous at all, guys. Look, it's this kind of, it was like an old school refill pad that I used, or college refill pad. And it's all falling apart now. But it was originally.
It's the real thing. It's the real thing.
And I have at the top here the list, which is what my working title had been. But the date, so I began on the 11th of October 2002 at 2 a.m. So that's where my head was. I was thinking deep thoughts at 2 a.m. And on the very corner here, I have number 10. So I knew, this is going to be a spoiler. Most people have read P.S. I Love You. But I have number 10, don't be afraid to fall in love. So I knew where my character was going. And I knew what Jerry, her husband, was kind of building her up. You know, he wanted to build up her strength or help her to do it herself. You know, he obviously couldn't do it, but and that she would eventually get to the point where she wouldn't be afraid, not necessarily to fall in love again, but, you know, that she wasn't stuck. She wasn't stuck without him. So it is there. And I have, you know, we've talked more in detail about this, I didn't know when I wrote P.S. I Love You how to write a novel. And when I just wrote the story, which is probably what you just should do. But I remember when I signed my first book deal, there was a word count in it. And I think it had to be between, I think it was 100,000 words. And I had no concept of what a 100,000 words novel was like. So I went out and I bought a book, or I counted the words in a book that I had. I counted the words on one page, and then I multiplied it by the page number. And then so I have at the back here, like chapter by chapter, how many words are in it, so that I was writing a proper book. Because the idea of a contract terrified me, and the idea that I would not, you know, that I would break the rules of this contract, I thought I'd be in huge legal trouble. So kind of the innocence, really, the innocence of that. That's
it really is. I mean, that's the thing, and it literally, you had no idea when you were writing that what was going to happen. Like, it wasn't, you didn't set out to say, right, I'm going to write this bestseller. It literally was pouring your heart onto the page at 2 a.m. in the morning. And then I love that word count thing, because you like literally going back to check to see if what you got was what they wanted. With all this stuff going on, I think it's very exciting.
And ultimately, I think, you know, any publisher will tell you that they don't want a word count exactly. I mean, it's just kind of a guide. They want you to write the book that means, you know, that's the best way for you to write it. And because, you know, when I do a lot of talks, there's a lot of people who want to publish and who want to write a novel themselves. And I think that's what happens. You start trying to ask, what are the points that you can tick off? Like, what do I need to do to write a book? And I kind of was doing that too. Like, what is the correct amount of words to write the story? When really you shouldn't be thinking about that at all. It's like, just how do I naturally tell this story? What is, you know, how that's it, full stop. How do I naturally tell the story? You know, so that's not and stretched out and padded or held back because it's too many words, or but like these are the things that you learn along the way. And thankfully, that book was published and changed everything for me.
Definitely did. Yeah, and it is very much that, getting that first draft out, finding the story, getting it all onto the page, and that's the only thing you need to worry about when you start writing, isn't it? And is that still the same for you with subsequent books? Is it just getting that first draft written?
Yeah, it has changed somewhat over the years. Like, I think, I've written, I'm on my 20th novel now. So I think at the beginning...
That's stunning. I just like, oh my goodness me. And as I was saying the last time we met, you don't age. Every single time I meet you, you look 10 years younger. So.
I definitely age, definitely. I have nice lights on here. But I think, like, some novels, I think I need to be writing it very specifically and perfectly. I feel like I need to write exactly. And then other novels I have really hurried. I've written a first draft very, very quickly, for nobody else to see but me. And it's just almost like I don't know if people with theater or with acting, you block a scene. So I feel like I'm kind of blocking the story to see how it can be structured and constructed, and will it work? And then I go back and I like to think I write it first with the heart and then the second time with the head, but sometimes maybe that it takes some chapters might be with the heart and some chapters might be with the head. And basically when I go back, I need to write it with the heart and head. And I think lately, of the last few novels, the first drafts have been very, very loose, and as a kind of just for me to see if this novel will work, and then I go back over and over and over it again.
Yeah. I like to think of it like a drawing with the construction lines, and the construction lines to stay in for the first draft, but then going back with the head is to take out the construction lines and put in the bits that prop it up, I suppose.
That's a really good way to describe it. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, you don't want to see the strings.
Exactly.
Get rid of all that. And I think sometimes I will bridge one part of the story to the next, and I realize, well, I didn't need that bridge. You can take that out. So yeah, it needs to be less robotic in the final read. So yeah, the edit is important. I think the further I've gone along, the more important I've taken the edit. And often, even when it's come down to like a copy edit, I've made some quite big changes. So whereas I think beforehand, in my early days, I thought the book was finished really at a copy edit. I mean, it probably should be.
It should be, really. Your publishers must love you.
But I have no fear now, actually, in just kind of going and changing things, not drastically, but I can see that there's still time before it goes to print. So I don't know if that's a good thing that's happened to me, but definitely maybe I've just relaxed a lot more, and I can see that the story can keep changing around.
Yeah, it's staying true to the story, isn't it? It's because it percolates in your head. Once you've written it, it still takes time for it to develop and to be the best story it can be. So catching those changes, it's great that you have the opportunity to be able to do that. Definitely.
Yeah, and also in early days, I think I would have got edit notes and jumped on them straight away. And it's important to sleep on them. Sometimes when an editor will send the notes, it's really, God, it can be awful. You think there's a massive amount of work to do, and then just simply sleeping on it, and then the next day you realize it's really not that bad. So, or thinking about just taking more time to think about things. I've learned that over the years, not to jump headfirst into it all the time and speedily get things out.
Yeah. It's interesting. The process is fascinating. And 20 books is 20 ideas. So talk to us now. We come and keeping them fresh. They're all fresh. They're all new ideas. And that's what's so wonderful, I think, about your body of work, is that it's also different. And particularly the short stories in Raw, which I love. We'll try and get some time to talk about that later because they're amazing. But take us to Freckles and take us to Allegra Bird. Here's the cover, guys. You can see it. This is the lovely hardback. How did the idea for that come? Because again, this is fresh, it's new, it's something completely different.
Yeah, it came from hearing the phrase, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I had never heard it before. My brother-in-law said it to me, and it's just one of those phrases that sometimes when I hear something or see something, it's like, bing, the light bulb goes on. And it just got my head, ping, 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 all the ideas going. It was such a simple phrase that made me think of so much. Actually less about myself and more about fiction. I always go to fictional, like, oh, this could be an idea for a character. So it's about a character whose name is Allegra Bird, but her nickname is Freckles. And she hears this expression, and she immediately, what happened to me happens to her. She starts thinking about her 5 people, who are the closest 5 people to her, and what do their characters say about who she is. So she spends time analysing her close five, and not content with what she discovers, she realises that she has the power to kind of mold herself and become whoever she wants to be by choosing a very specific set of 5 people. So she reaches out to 5 people in different worlds to become a well-rounded version of the person she wants to be. So she reaches out to somebody in sport, somebody from her past, somebody from her future, somebody in business. Is that 5? Somebody in and a politician, somebody in politics.
Yeah, very important.
And so just to kind of cover all the bases, and it's about her kind of curating herself and figuring out who she is and who she wants to be, and trying to find her place in the world. So, and she's a very peculiar character, but I adored her. I adored her way.
She's wonderful. Yeah, she's a really wonderful character.
The whole story just stemmed from that one phrase, and obviously it's about a whole lot more, but that's how it happened. It was this one thing that went bam, and then the character and the story came from that.
Yeah, I love that idea that, and that I think that happens to writers, that you hear something and it's literally like a light bulb, an explosion in your head. And because I read this, and I was very familiar with that phrase, and in business, and I was like, and I looked at this and I thought, why didn't I think of writing a book? It's like, one of those utter no-brainers. It's like, that's such a brilliant phrase. It works so well in this book, because we do see. Go on.
Sorry, go on. You're very familiar with this phrase, which is
very much so, and yes, and like the board you can't afford, and the people around you who are going to influence you, particularly on the business side, because I run businesses as well, so that's where it comes from. It's not from the literary side at all, and yes, and it's just but to take it and make art, to create the novel around it, and to find Allegra and to find Allegra's voice, to me is that what makes this book so special, because we see her change and we see her development. But I love her because she's such an ordinary character, because she's a parking attendant, isn't she? She's a traffic warden. Traffic warden. What's the difference between a parking attendant and a traffic warden? She puts tickets on people's cars.
She's a parking warden. Yeah, so
parking warden. That's it.
Yeah, just a mixture of both. She is, and she lives life. And the reason why I wanted her to do that is because she takes this phrase that she hears as a rule, and so she's very rigid on rules. And she wanted to be in a Garda, the Irish Police Service, and she didn't get accepted. So this is kind of the second best thing. This is her plan B. So she feels like she's walking her beat every day, and there's a real rhythm to her as a character, to her day, and to her and to the way she thinks. Like the same thing, get up at the same time, the same thing for breakfast, leave the house at the same time, actually, which is like most people, but
it's very rigid in her world.
The same route to work, passes the same people, says the same hello, the same good morning, everything is on point. She walks the same streets, she tickets the same cars, she knows who owns what car, what business, what car belongs to what business. And then she hears this phrase, and it's like, bam, another rule for her to follow. So, and that's why I made her like that.
But she's brilliant. No, she's lovely, because she's very ordinary, and she's very normal, and she has the rules, and they are so important. And that's part of creating a character, because the person she meets who tells her about this 5 people thing is a guy called Rooster, who is completely the opposite of her, who is really lives in this world of social media and drives I just love the yellow Lamborghini, because I love detail in a book. I think it really shows you so much about the character, and you can use it as an author to really summarize the character just in a few words. And a yellow Lamborghini is it's so Rooster. It's just a perfect match, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about him.
So he and the reason why she takes this phrase as an insult, by the way, is because he is not her friend. He's the owner of this yellow. Is it Ferrari or Lamborghini? Ferrari.
I think so. Maybe it's a Ferrari. So I know it's a very fancy car, and I don't have one.
In one of the drafts, it was a Lamborghini, which is why I'm confused. But I think it also.
I might have had a proof that I read it in that.
Yes, I think I changed it because somebody locally had one, and I thought I don't.
Oh dear.
I'm thinking I'm writing about them, so I changed it to a Ferrari. But it really offends Allegra. He keeps parking it and not paying for a parking ticket, and she feels like he's kind of this flashy guy who just doesn't care and doesn't respect rules, doesn't respect her. So she begins this kind of almost argument with him in her head every day, every time she sees it without a ticket, and she puts one there, and she's probably, to be fair, giving him too many tickets as well, not giving him enough grace period. But he's this very, and he is this he was a YouTube star, you know, as a child, and he's kind of growing up and trying to make something of himself and build a business and become and grow into the adult world. He's kind of like a Peter Pan who became famous at a young age. And sometimes they say when people become famous, they become stuck at the age that they first became famous. And so he's kind of trying to spread his wings, and that's why the business phrase appeals to him. And it's hot in his head when she gives him another ticket, and he gets so angry and he rips it up in her face, and he kind of accuses her, you know, of not being a good person and not having been in good company with that phrase. So, and she takes it literally. She re-examines her whole entire life because of this one phrase. But they do have a kind of a weird friendship as a result of it. She wants to know more. What does it mean? What does this phrase mean? So she wants to spend more time.
It's wonderful how you build that friendship, because we learn more about both of them as a result. And she's a really deep character. There's lots going on in her life, isn't there? And you managed to bring, I have to say to everybody, I cried at the end of this book as well. So this is a book you have to buy. And I would also say I've actually bought it for the 5 people in my life, in my circle, because I just think it's a perfect book for that. I think we should all have that, be buying it for our circle of 5, have a think about who those people are. But no, she's a really complex character. She has her set of rules. She lives in a house where she's renting, so she's in Malahide, and but her roots are way off down in the west of Ireland, and so she's a bit displaced. And I think displacement as a theme is really strong all the way through the book. So it's her being displaced because she's in Dublin, and she's sort of displaced as an individual because she hasn't quite found. She knows when Rooster tells her, she knows she hasn't quite found her place, and that's why she tries to sort of curate the people. But I think the one of the things I absolutely loved about it is the continuation of that theme through to Donica, her landlord, and the bowls that he creates. So talk to us a little bit about the significance of those bowls.
Yeah, so she, you're absolutely right. She is displaced, and she's an outsider. And I think, I love writing stories about outsiders, because I think she's feeling quite lonely and ostracized, and she doesn't really fit in with regular society. She doesn't feel like, she always says something awkward, where she says that, what does she say? Human relationships, it's like a dance she can't catch the rhythm to.
Yes, I love that. I love that phrase.
She's out of step with people. But she's living in this back garden of a very wealthy couple, and the mother of the woman who lives there is a very successful businesswoman, and the husband is an artist, and he makes these bowls, and she just thinks they have like really no meaning whatsoever, and you can buy the smallest bowl for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of euro, and thousands of euro. And she thinks it has really no meaning. And then they have a conversation one day where he explains it's about, during the famine in Ireland, so many people had to go to these workhouses, and so his bowls represented, you probably explain this better than I do.
Yeah, well, it's British occupation, isn't it? Yet again, and needing to have
how I tell this story.
I just love this, because this is a whole layer that is, you look at this book and you think, oh, it's popular fiction and it's Allegra and she's on her journey and all, but actually it's so much deeper than that. There are so many layers in it. And to me, the displacement of the Irish people and the bowls, and you'll have to read it, guys, because Donica summarizes it brilliantly.
Yeah, he does it a lot better than me, I have to say.
Well, me too, but it really is. It's about British occupation. It's about the Irish people being displaced. It's about the symbolism of a bowl and the lack of food. And there's a lot going on in one bowl. I just absolutely love that detail. But I think it's a book of detail.
And that's, I actually always do that with my books. And I think I like to have, like, yes, on the outside, some people may think they're frothy or whatever. Because yes, I like them to be uplifting and for people to feel good. But there is always a little bit of other stuff going on in there, and that I love people to read it, to see it, because I'm not a preacher personally. Clearly am in my writing.
Not at all. It doesn't come across like that. No, because it's the characters. The characters are talking, aren't they?
Yeah, but the idea of that is I suppose everything means something, and that's and every character that we meet, every person that we meet has something going on, and I wanted that to be reflected in these bowls that mean nothing. They actually have a very important symbolism, and that's kind of reflective of the whole entire novel, that everybody's important, everybody has a story, and every peculiar person has a place. reflected
Definitely.
in a bowl.
In a bowl, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And there's something lovely about, I love the roundness of it all and everything. It's just fabulous. But talking about that, yeah, everybody has a place and the symbolism. We open the book with a snail, don't we?
We
So,
do. Yes.
Tell us about
So,
the snail.
yes,
I remember
the snail. Usually when I come up with my ideas, I always come up with the concept first. So the premise. And then I try to figure out what kind of character would find themselves in that position. But it's never really time for me to write until I hear the voice of the character. You know, as soon as I can hear them, how do they sound? You know, are they cynical? Are they sarcastic? Are they positive? Are they like what tone of voice do they have? So I was kind of thinking about who would my Allegra be, who would my Freckles be when I was outside bringing the bins out late at night at my
the glamour of the international bestseller.
And it was late at night and it was wet and I felt that crunch beneath my foot as I stepped on a snail, which I hate. I hate that feeling. And all of a sudden, like that light bulb moment, Allegra's voice came to me and I immediately ran, not for a pen and paper because I couldn't get one, but I got my phone and I immediately started typing in everything that kind of comes next because I'm going to read it for you if you're interested.
Oh, yeah. Please do. Yeah, definitely.
So this is the prologue to Freckles. And it's the moment I stepped on a snail and heard Freckles' voice. My sequins are stuck together. Hold on. I can't lift my arm.
Wardrobe mishap.
Wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah.
The crunch of a snail under my shoe in the darkness, the crack of the shell, the squish, the ooze. It hurts me at the back of my teeth, a shooting pain through a nerve in my gums. I can't pull my foot up fast enough. I can't rewind. The damage can't be undone. I've hit the squishy interior of the snail's sluggish insides, flattened and twisted them into the ground. I feel the mush on the sole of my shoe for the next few steps, carrying a crime scene on a slippery sole, death on my shoe, smeared guts, a twist and wipe rids me of it. It happens walking at night on rain-slicked ground when I can't see where I'm stepping and the snail can't see who's stepping. I've always felt bad for the snail, but now I know what it's like. Retribution, karma. I now know how it feels for my outer shell to be cracked, for my insides to feel exposed. He stepped on me. He walked with me for a few steps too, his soul slippy with my mush. I wonder if his soul is slippy with me too, if he felt the crack and ooze of me under his gaze as he spat his hate-filled words and then walked away. My shield taken with him for a few steps before he realized he was still carrying me. A twist of his shoe like extinguishing a cigarette, and I'm discarded. The remainders of me on the pathway, cracked and exposed and unprotected soft interior I've worked so hard to protect. A leakage of all the parts of me that were so well contained, feelings, thoughts, insecurities all oozing out, a silvery, slivery track of emotional entrails. I didn't see his foot coming, wonder if I took him by surprise too. Even though it may feel like it, this is not where it all ends. I'm not dead. I'm crushed and oozing, a smithereened Allegra bird. You can't fix the broken outer shell, but you can rebuild.
Fantastic opening. That absolutely sucked me straight into the story. And it really, I love it when you read it because it really gives us a sense of your voice. And for anybody who has dipped in, who hasn't read one of your books before, in the very unlikely event, I think it gives you a really insight into the book because that is Allegra Bird, isn't it? That's where we start. And then you literally, we're building and we're finding out what her story is until we get to a very satisfying ending. Through her whole process. But I think it is about character, isn't it? And I think that's one of the things that's strong through all of your books is this sense of this amazing character who is multi-layered and has so much depth. And she really does start off quite broken, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does start off broken. And I think she knows that things aren't right. When we meet her first, she's already on a kind of secret mission that isn't revealed until later in the book. So that when she hears that phrase from Rooster, you know, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The reason why, I suppose, if you're sensitive about something and somebody says something, it's more powerful. It's like a knife, you know, it really hurts. So it's not like she was going about life just fine and she hears this thing and it turns her upside down. She was already a little bit topsy-turvy. So she has this beautiful connection with her dad. And he lives in the southwest of Ireland on an island, Valentia Island. And she has had to leave him behind to go on this kind of new mission in her life. and he's such a huge part of her. She looks like her mother, who left her when she was a child, but she has the freckles of her father. So that's a really important link between her and him. And when she was a young girl at school, she used to connect the freckles on her skin dot to dot, like she was mirroring the night sky. So she would draw constellations on her skin. So that's why I named it Freckles. Like, freckles is a really important part of her identity, and the connection she has with her skin, but also how she's going through this portion of her life, trying to join the dots and become a little bit more whole than she currently is. But when it comes to her mom and dad, she says her mom left her behind to have everything. She gave her up to have everything, but her father gave up everything to have her. So there's a really lovely father-daughter bond in this story. And yet she's had to leave him behind. And you know, often she said, am I leaving the really amazing number one person that she has in order to find 5 more? And should she be doing that? Maybe she should just be staying with the one really important person. So there's a kind of, there's that lovely bond between them, as she feels kind of torn between trying to find a new life and the one that she has with him.
Yeah, and it's that discovery process, but again, it's a displacement, because that's why when you're getting in it coming in so many different levels, because her mother leaving her, and also the fact that because her mother's Spanish, isn't she, and the father's Irish, you've got that sort of sense of dislocation and displacement as well, and it's layered right the way through so subtly. And actually, when I was reading this is a slight tangent, I wasn't until I was reading reviews of the book that I realized there's no speech marks in this book. So I had read the entire book and not noticed there were no speech marks.
I love that you didn't notice this. That's great.
Not at all.
I mean, some people have contacted me on Twitter to tell me that there's no speech marks. Did I know?
Yeah. They've been left out.
Did I notice that I had forgotten speech marks? I did notice. It was a very conscious thing I did, because I feel like I wanted to be. It's like Allegra's stream of consciousness. This entire book, we're in her head, and it really goes from one, not peculiar thought, because really everybody's thoughts jump around all the time, or at least mine do. But it's going from one thing to the next, you know, from what she's seeing to what she's feeling to what she's saying to what somebody else is saying, and it's all just kind of flowing in together. And I felt that way. We were really in her head. When I was writing it, I felt I was really in her head, and it just was a lovely place to be, because it could just go anywhere. You know?
Well, it is, because we see different characters through her eyes, and it just literally flows, and that's what I think you've absolutely captured that stream of consciousness, because we are in her head, and we feel we know her so well by the time we get to the end of the book, and we're learning, and we're experiencing the barriers and the obstacles that she has to overcome with her all the way through. But her cast of surrounding characters, I'm not going to reveal the spoiler as to the 5 or the details or anything, but you've got a cast of surrounding characters who are all really interesting in their own rights as well. And the people down in the West are just gems, aren't they? Particularly her father. I love the sheep in the garden, and he has a whole world. You can see it, his grand piano that gets eaten by mice, rats, isn't it? Rats or mice. And it's just so real, and it feels so alive. And I think it's that stream of consciousness that you've managed to capture.
I have a thing where whenever I go out, I come home and my husband says to me, who did you meet today? Like, what happened to you? Because I seem to attract a lot of unusual folk. I think it might be because I am one, and it takes one to know one. But I do have a lot of, and I'm very open to people, and I love people, actually, and most people I do, not everybody, but particularly very unusual people, and I'm just very intrigued and curious by people who are just really off doing their own thing and not bothering about anybody else. I think that's brilliant, and so I think and I love observing that a lot, and I think I've put a lot of those kinds of people in this book. You know, just kind of very. Her father's very eccentric type of person, and she's grown up with a very, like, not abnormal childhood, but you know, just fun and not very structured, and so I just love to take those kind of people that I see when I'm out in the world and put them in a novel and give them all those kind of peculiar little characteristics and quirks. I think they've all got some quirks, and
they all have. They're all really, but they're so clear as well. You can see them. So, but you're a great listener, aren't you? I think that's probably why you attract these people, because you listen to stories and you hear what they're saying.
Like most authors, I think our number one on our job is to listen and observe. And observe is quite important, and then really listen to what people are saying, which doesn't happen a lot. There's a lot of people who love to, I'm talking a lot right now, but generally I don't talk a lot. I think I love to watch people who are listening also, because I think the person who's talking knows that people are watching them. It's kind of this performance the talker does, but the people who are listening around the table or wherever you are don't know people are looking at them, and they're the kind of people I watched, to see the reactions and to find the truth in the expressions that they make, or the body language tells a lot, and I'm really, really, really into that. Just watching people's expressions and body movements and that kind of thing, and understanding a lot of what makes humans tick and the other language that we have, which is not spoken. And so putting all that into novels is just really, really important.
That's what makes it jump off the page, because we feel like we're in the room with them, and we can see, it's that unspoken stuff, it's the body language, and you capture that.
Are you like that as well as an author?
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's just because we're all very nosy. But I spend a lot of time watching people and overhearing conversations and listening in, because I think that is where you learn, because it's people's interactions and the way they react. And for you, when you're writing it, your characters' reactions to the other characters is what gives the story and makes it all so beautiful. And Allegra has a few sticky moments in this book. She has some real moments where you wait and see what's going to happen next. But I think it's that darkness and shade, and it's that light that's in life and is in her life, and that's why the ending is, for me, so satisfying and wonderful.
Thank you. Well, she's also great fun as well as a character.
Brilliant.
I'd say she's very rigid in her work life and everything, but kind of after hours she's quite fluid and
surprising, actually. Yeah.
But I think I find that a lot with people who are I suppose I shouldn't start listing off professions, but people who are very kind of rigid in life surprise me by being very, like judges, for example, can be very eccentric characters, or accountants, or
yes, they have a wild side.
I always find those people who are very kind of structured, kind of strict way in their work are kind of really wild when they go out and have. So Allegra's like that. She is a rule maker, but a rule follower, but also breaks a few too in her own free time.
Yeah, she has some great fun with the alarm, doesn't she, in the house, and the fox. There's a whole load of stuff about the alarm and the fox and the police. Then we get back into her desire to be a police officer.
She's a nude model. She sits for drawings for the extra cash, but she finds that even though she's the one sitting there naked and everyone's looking at her, she's learning more about the artists, about the way they're looking at her, and about the way they draw her. So I love that about her, because there's
a lot of very unexpected things in this book, but you will find them. But they're beautiful because they blend and they flow, and she's a whole character. Because we talk a lot about three-dimensional characters when we're writing, and she really absolutely is one of the most three-dimensional characters I've ever read, because of all those elements, because of the unexpected and the expected, and the fact that she has to battle with things. And she has lovely relationships with people. The relationship she has with the woman who runs the art place is just gorgeous. I love that, and that's something that comes to pass, feeds into the ending as well, doesn't it? Very much so.
I think that we often put people in boxes too much, and I've been doing a lot of interviews, and people say, "What kind of person are you?" And I always I'm like lots of different type. It depends what day you get me. I'm not like all over the place, but it depends what life throws at me, and how I deal with it. And I think sometimes when you're writing or telling a story, it can become, you might have notes that are like, is this in keeping with her character? Well, actually people's characters change, or it's part of people's character to be up and down. I often think, a comedian could be hilariously funny, but are notoriously, can be quite down and dark and depressed. So you're not going to just write about a character that's one thing all the time. And that's very important in a novel. Obviously you want it to be consistent as a character, but to give them as much room to be a real human being as possible. So I think I haven't always done that in early books, and I'm learning that more as you go along, to stretch your character out in as many different directions as possible, because that's what we're like as human beings.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's absolutely the skill of the writer. And that is why, because you're developing as a writer, you're able to move from book to book to book to book to book. So this is, I love talking to you. We could talk all day, but we need to take some questions, I think, because you have an audience out there as well, much as we like to think that it's just us chatting. I know. So first one, a fan, there's a fan of all your writing. Now, how do you think one should keep putting one's all into writing when they suffer setbacks? So yeah, rejection is the most awful thing in this business, isn't it?
It is, and I still get rejection. I've been moving from publisher to publisher in different countries, and sometimes they want certain novels, sometimes they don't. So it doesn't end when you're published.
Yeah,
I think you just have to personally believe in what you're doing, and I think it's very important to find. I have found that, like, all you need is one person somewhere to connect with what you're writing, and they become your champion and can convince a team of other people. So it's really about finding, first of all, doing the absolute best that you could possibly do, and then finding someone who hears you and who connects with you, and then can spread the word. But when it comes to writing, like, it's very easy to say, don't put yourself under pressure, because it sometimes can be very difficult. But just try and relax and know that the first, as we said earlier, that the first draft of what you write is not the final draft.
Absolutely. We were talking about this before we came on air. Yeah.
You can go over it and over and over it. You can try different things. If it doesn't work, you change it and do something else. It's like, it's don't put too much pressure on yourself to be right first time around. Things can keep changing. And then on the other side of that, don't keep changing things for other people. If they make suggestions that it could be better, if you're personally happy with it, then don't compromise your work. So I may sound like I have
that makes sense. That makes sense.
But you need to change things for yourself. But take advice when it feels right, but not if you think you're compromising your work.
Yeah, definitely. Just keep writing was the best advice I was ever given. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Just keep writing. Absolutely. Yeah. So from Aaron, how do you take reviews? Oh, goodness.
Well, how do I take reviews? First of all, I don't read reviews. Not myself. I don't read any reviews, because a review is only just one person's opinion. And so it's very interesting to me. I've learned at this stage that some of my books people have told me this has changed my life, and other people are like, can't even get past the first chapter.
Yeah.
So it's either going to be the best book you've read or absolutely the worst book you've read. So I can't, like, obviously it's amazing when you get a good review, because it kind of feeds that little, it feeds your ego, and it makes you think, yay, I
can do this.
But then on the other side, there's something where people will be like, they'll give you one star on whatever because your book arrived ripped.
Yes. So it's
So you're being blamed for a bad delivery. So obviously, and that is the mentality I have, that it's lovely to take the good, but then if you're going to believe all the good, then you have to believe all the bad as well.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, just read the good ones. But I think the thing is, it's more about the person who's reviewing it than it is about your book necessarily, because it's So,
and you know what? I was going to say this in my last answer, but I stopped because I was talking too much. But when I talk about Allegra sitting naked while everyone else draws her, and she learns more about the people drawing her than they know about her, that's how I feel as an author. When I read reviews and things like that, or I get feedback from people, I'm learning more about them as a person than anything else. It's it's been interesting. I've spoken to some reviewers who said, I'm sorry I was going through a bad moment in my life, or someone who was going through a divorce and read P.S. I Love You and just couldn't get the level of love that was in it. Yeah. So it really does also depend on what people's personal positions are. But I think that's how I take reviews. I go, oh, that person was going through something.
Yeah, definitely. Very sensible. You have to hold that thought. And also that feeds into the whole rejection thing too, doesn't it? Because, you never know. You only need the one person that loves it on the day. And you do get people who aren't in the mood for reading whatever you're sending at the time. So.
Yeah. And the other thing with rejections is they might not be rejecting because they don't like it. The reason could be they have something that's kind of similar.
Yeah, loads of reasons.
They've published something like that already and it didn't work, or they don't want to do it again. Like there are so many reasons. Like people who are rejecting your work could read it and legitimately love it, but they just can't publish for whatever reason, you know. And that's the way it goes.
So true, so true. So another question here, there was one about success in a minute, which I'm going to come back to at the end if we get a chance, but adaptions mostly lose originality. How did you feel about the TV film adaptions of your books?
I really loved them, but I have to say that I saw them as adaptions, and I got really excited about that. I wanted to see how somebody else was going to interpret my work. I've seen enough movies based on novels to know that things change. And so when I watched P.S. I Love You, I was happy that actually I was happy by the things that were similar, you know. And I think that there's some things were improved, you know. In my book, I thought, oh, I could have done that. That was a clever idea. So, but also they're two very different forms, so you know that things have to change. But you know, if someone was messing around with my book, then that would not be allowed to happen. But I see my book as my work, that's my thing, and then the film is somebody else's interpretation. And that's the way that I and like, it's just such an exciting thing being involved in, you know, when I sit down to watch a movie, or even if you're on set and you see the cast and the crew and the sets, and it's so exciting. I always see more positive in it than negative, I think. Definitely. And it introduces the story to a whole new audience that would never have perhaps picked up my book. So there's a lot of pluses in it.
Yeah, definitely. That's the exciting bit. New readers, isn't it? And taking it to new people. Now, so Sarah's asking, I don't know if you're allowed to tell us this, can we have an insight or a vague plot for your next novel? Do you have to kill us if you tell us?
I don't think I'm allowed to say.
You're not allowed to say anything. Top secret.
Yeah, I don't think
it's wonderful. We can say that.
It's amazing. Actually, I'm going to say something I've never said before. I think it's the best thing I've ever written.
Oh,
yeah, I think really, and I wrote it. I wrote it during one of the lockdowns that we had, and it's kind of it's not written in chapters. It's written as a series of moments, and I think that's because in hindsight, it's because I was grabbing the moments that I had to write. So, you know, I would take a moment and I would write a moment, and so it's a book in a series of moments. And I'm just, can I say? No, I can't say yes.
No, don't say anything because you'll get into trouble. And then they'll shoot me and they won't ask me ever back again. So no, you're all right. It's me that's the problem.
I just finished the copy edit anyway, and it's going to be out next year. So it's very close to coming out.
Nearly there. So you'll be seeing it soon, guys. But what is interesting there is that you're playing with form again. So you took speech marks out of Allegra and and Freckles, and you're playing with form. And I think that's fantastic because it's moving. You can feel it moving forwards all the time because we have to keep it fresh, don't we?
Absolutely. I never want to write the same book twice. Not interested in that. Yeah,
definitely. And there's a question about success has come back round again, which is great. Perfect timing. So with the phenomenal success, which obviously you weren't expecting when you sat down at 2 a.m. to handwrite P.S. I Love You, has it affected the later work? Is there pressure on you to perform, or do you, I feel you just stick to what you want to write, to be honest, but
I do just stick to what I want to write. I think so mostly all positives. It's like, you know, to be remembered for anything, you know, but you know, P.S. I Love You I think there's such positive feedback about that book, and I think it did begin my entire career. I would say the only negatives, really, if we're going to be digging into it, is because it's such a success, and I have written very different books that have come after that it's difficult to, I think people think that I write romance if they've never read anything else. And I don't actually, I don't do that. I write all different kinds of stories, and so it can be confusing. I'm trying to find a readership that can accept me for all the different types of books that I read, instead of, you know, people going, oh, this isn't like that one, and throwing it away. So kind of set me up too good in a way. But I think, look, if anything, it's introduced me to like a really big audience, and it's given me the ability to be able to write, I think, whatever it is I feel and I desire, and that's good as well. But I just think it's what is the word? Maybe pigeonholed in a way. That's it. Yeah, maybe pigeonholed in a way that I'm the P.S. I Love You girl, but I'm not going to keep writing that story over and over again.
No, exactly. It's going to be, and that impacts the reviews as well. So definitely. Amita's just saying it's so lovely to hear you, especially how you described the PS I Love You experience. I just find that, to me, when we first met and started talking, that had made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. The thought of you sitting there and writing at 2 a.m. and the story pouring out is incredible. Yeah, and Sarah saying that your books really touch us, and you're a beautiful writer. You absolutely are. I think I've love reading and finding out more. I think it's the depth as well is so important that you bring to the page, because they aren't just romances. They are multi-layered, and I think we've talked about that. And I think that's really what's so exciting about it. Definitely.
I think the thread that links them all together is that I definitely write about someone who's going through a rough time, like struggling in one way or another. Displaced, definitely the word you've used. They're feeling very displaced in their life for every novel, and it's about trying to find their way, like just their way forward. It's trying to find hope again and trying to. And I think we're all, like, everybody is going through. That's what life is. I feel, life throws challenges at us, and we have to summon up the strength and get through it. And then we go, phew, got over that one, and then we're toddling along in our life again, and then something else happens. And so that's the thing that connects us all. We have to just keep digging to get through the next thing. I don't know if that's not a very negative outlook.
No, that's wonderful. I think that's absolutely, because it is because that's what it is. And I think that's what every book is. It is this need to improve and need to find your way, and everybody has challenges. And I think that's particularly with Freckles, which I will show everybody again. I hope you're going to order it. Is the book which this is all about overcoming challenges, and Allegra has a lot. I think that's a wonderful place to finish up. So thank you very much indeed, Cecilia Ahern. Thank you so much, guys, for watching and tuning in, and thank you so much to Pune Literary Festival for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Pune. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions and for watching.
Exactly. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We have witnessed an interesting conversation today. We met the talented and creative women behind the novels we loved and enjoyed reading all these years. We thank Cecelia Ahern and Sam Blake for being our guests at PILF, and we wish you good luck for your future endeavors. Our next discussion, Women, the Soft Power, will begin soon. Please join us for the same at 7 p.m.
Yeah.